Okay, Social Security and Medicare taxes. So recall when we're self-employed, we kind of go back to chapter 6. I know you all have some kind of a mental block of chapter 6. That was a rough chapter. But if you recall, we talked about how we calculate self-employment tax for those who are self-employed, which was a pretty hefty tax. Now, for individuals who are employees and have a separate employer, that tax is shared between the employee and the employer. So, and the tax rates, so employees and employer portion, we have these, they're called, so this is all FICA tax. Federal Insurance Contributions Act is what that stands for. There are two types of tax here. OASDI, Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance, otherwise known as Social Security. Sorry, this is squeaky. And there's Medicare tax. So both of these together make up FICA tax. The tax rate, so this is employee, this is employer. The employee pays 6.2% of their taxable wages up to a maximum amount, and 1.45% in Medicare taxes, for a total of 7.65%. Now the employer pays an equal amount, 6.2% and 1.45%, for a total of 7.65%, which means the total, which is also the self-employment tax that is calculated, 12.4%, 2.9%, for a total of 15.3%. But when you're an employee, you only have to pay half of it. The employer pays the other half of those taxes. There is an additional Medicare tax, which is on incomes over, again, I'm sorry about the squeaky, it's only applied once income reaches $200,000. Now, the taxes, when you get to the preparing your income tax form, the amount of income that is subject to additional Medicare tax is based on your filing status. But employers will withhold once income gets to $200,000. They don't worry about different thresholds for different filing statuses. That reconciliation between what's been withheld and what's actually owed is calculated on the income tax form. So if you're married filing separately, your additional Medicare tax actually starts to kick in at $125,000. If you're married filing jointly, it doesn't kick in until $250,000. But the payroll, for payroll purposes, this is for single and head of household, all the other filing statuses. For payroll purposes, this is the threshold that they use. The amount of the tax is 0.9%. But it is only applied to the employee. It is not applied to the employer. The employer doesn't pay any of this tax. And so it would be 0.9% on income over $200,000 that would start to be withheld from employee paychecks. So again, the total amount would be 0.9%. The OASDI Social Security, remember, this only applies on earned income up to $168,600. So this stops at $168,600. This starts at $200,000. So this is a cap, essentially, a base. They call it the Social Security base, which is kind of weird because base we think of as something at the bottom, but it's really that's the top amount. The most that will be subject to Social Security tax in any particular year per individual. Okay, Medicare, there's no limit. Starts at the first dollar and ends never. Goes up to infinity. Okay, so these three different types of taxes all comprise FICA tax, the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. This is going through all of those tax rates there. So it's entirely possible, if you recall, so our basic calculation for how we come to arrive at our tax liabilities, we take our tax base times our rate to get to our tax liability. So in this case, these three amounts could be different bases. They are different rates as well, but they could also be different bases. So if we have somebody, let's say they earned $270,000 is their wage, their base for Social Security would be $168,600. Their base for Medicare tax would be the whole $270,000. And their base for the additional Medicare tax would be $70,000 because it doesn't kick in until they get over $200,000. So that base would be different for each of these. And then, of course, our rates, 6.2%, 1.45%, and 0.9%. Be careful with that calculation. Make sure you're doing the 0.9%, not 9%. Yes. Questions about the Medicare and the FICA taxes?